Our next story takes a unique look at the secret history of Southern sympathizers in the North during the Civil War. February 1862. The Confederate South has seized the upper hand in the war between the states. In the North, opposition to President Lincoln grows as fears spread his armies will be defeated. Secret societies form in the Union states bordering the South, united in opposition to both Lincoln and the war. Those Southern sympathizers operating north of the Mason-Dixon line are surprisingly powerful and dangerous. More than 140 years later, a Terre Haute, Indiana couple owns a mysterious artifact which they believe may shed light on this little-known chapter of the Civil War.
We think that it probably was an item that someone with Southern inclinations or Southern tendencies would wear.
We had this wonderful story about where this piece came from and who owned it, and we've always been very curious about, is the story true?
I'm Wes Cowan. I've come to Indiana to meet with Larry and Cindy Liggett to find out more about their family heirloom. The Civil War and American photography are my specialties, so I'm intrigued to see what they have. Oh, okay. Little tiny spyglass. This is called a Stanhope.
A Stanhope.
It's a little optical toy. Oh, my heavens, that's Jefferson Davis. I've never seen one with a picture of him inside. Right off the bat, I'm intrigued. As president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis was a powerful symbol of Southern secession. So what do you know about it? Cindy explains that the Stanhope was once owned by Mary and Henry Wagstaff, who lived in Lafayette, Indiana during the Civil War. Sadly, no photograph of Henry survives, but Cindy believes the Stanhope identifies the Wagstaffs as secret supporters of the Confederacy.
If he wore this, he would let others know that he was a Southern sympathizer.
It's certainly an interesting item for someone in a northern state to have owned. So, what do you want me to find out?
Is it truly an item that Southern sympathizers would wear to identify each other?
We know it belonged to this guy Wagstaff, and I've got some interesting questions to answer for you guys, and I'm ready to get started.
We're excited.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're
hope you
excited.
can help us out.
I've auctioned thousands of items related to the Civil War, but I've never seen a Jefferson Davis Stanhope. I've also never heard of Stanhopes being used as a covert way to communicate, like a secret handshake. But what's interesting about this is the picture inside. It contains probably the most famous portrait of Jefferson Davis that was ever taken. It was taken in 1861 by Matthew Brady, probably in his Washington studio. So the image is certainly from the right time period, right at the start of the Civil War. But is it the kind of thing that someone would wear on their clothes as a form of identification? Looking a little more closely, I'm not so sure. It's got this little brass suspension ring, and it probably was originally meant to be a watch fob. But you know what? There's no evidence of any wear whatsoever on the rings of this suspension pieces here. I doubt that this was ever worn at all. If I'm going to answer Cindy and Larry's question, I've got to find out more about the extent of opposition to Lincoln in Indiana. During the war, Northerners who opposed the conflict were nicknamed Copperheads. They got their name supposedly from Southern sympathizers who sent copperhead snakes to President Lincoln in an attempt to assassinate him. The press got a hold of this. There are even political cartoons that show copperhead snakes attacking Lady Liberty. By 1863, as opposition to Lincoln in the war grows in the North, the Copperhead movement takes hold in Indiana, where many residents have Southern ancestors. Indiana was a hotbed of Southern sympathizers. The Copperheads were everywhere here. And in order to show their support for the South, folks in Indiana wore little pins made out of butternuts, and the butternuts were used in the South to dye the Confederate uniform. But I found no information that Stanhopes were used by Copperheads during the war. I wonder if Henry and Mary Wagstaff were even Southern sympathizers. You know, they were from Lafayette, Indiana. I wonder what the town was like during the Civil War.
Hello!
Yeah, Cowan.
Mary Immel.
Mary Immel is a Lafayette historian.
Thank you so much.
She relates an event that took place here during the war that may be a clue to solving our mystery. Her story begins in February 1862, following the Union victory at the Battle of Fort Donelson in Tennessee. Thousands of Confederate prisoners of war dispatched to Indiana, 800 to Lafayette. Many of these Confederate prisoners died right here in Lafayette and are buried in the local cemetery. Mary explains how the captured Confederates' arrival in Lafayette almost 150 years ago inflamed an already divided town.
We know that there were a lot of divisions here within Lafayette of people who were on both sides of the issue.
She tells me she did some digging of her own and found a fascinating letter written by Mary Wagstaff, Henry's wife.
And in the letter, she describes how her family took in this little Confederate prisoner who was at death's doorstep, how she and members of her family nursed the boy around the clock until he seemed to be on the mend.
The experience of nursing a sick 14-year-old soldier boy inspires Mary to write passionately of her family's support for the rebel cause.
We are known in this community as loyal to the state and national government and friends to the prosecution of the war for a restoration of the Union as it was.
One could interpret that, that phrase, restoration of the Union as it was, as evidence of maybe some Wagstaff family or maybe Mary in particular Southern sympathies.
I would think that would be a reasonable assumption.
So the Liggetts may be right. Mary and Henry Wagstaff probably were sympathetic to the Southern cause. But was this Stanhope really used to communicate with other Copperheads? I want to find out when this spyglass was made. I've asked my colleague Elise LeRae to help me out. She's off to the George Eastman House, International Museum of Photography and Film in Rochester, New York.
Hi, Elise.
Hi, how are you doing?
Wes sent the Stanhope ahead to Mark Osterman, an historian here.
Okay, tell me the history first of the Stanhope in general.
Mark explains how in 1859, a Frenchman, René Degrand, had invented a camera with multiple lenses that could take many tiny images simultaneously.
You end up with this. And this is an original Degrand
Jeez, look at all
sheet
those.
of uncut positive images. The next step was to take a diamond and cut out all the good ones.
Degrand then fixed the tiny images on top of a small magnifying lens known as a Stanhope.
René Degrand realizes that if he takes the old technology of the Stanhope lens, makes the lens smaller, and then glues the little microphotograph to the end of the lens, he now has its own viewing unit.
These images from the book Stanhope's A Closer View by Gene Scott illustrate how in showcasing everything from scantily clad women to famous vistas, the Stanhopes were a modern marvel of the day. Mark also tells me that Stanhopes have become a hot item among collectors, and replicas are sometimes sold to unsuspecting buyers. I want him to make sure ours is the real thing.
It's the Stanhope.
Oh, I
and
see
the
it.
base of this. We're going to use standard micrography to look at this. We're going to use transmitted light. And let me bring up the light. There we go. There is the actual image on the small piece of glass glued to the lens.
It's tiny.
Yeah, it's very, very tiny. All right, ready for this?
Yep. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, there you go.
That's incredible.
Very, very good. What we're seeing is just amazing. The resolution is very good by any standards. The depth of tone, the look of the hair.
Mark tells me the clarity is a signature of authentic Stanhopes.
You can't get this kind of resolution with modern films.
And there's something else, the telltale evidence of a long-ago craftsman.
The cut on the edge of the glass, all of this area here, this jagged edge, looks like cliffs.
Yeah.
This is where the original plate was cut with a diamond.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's not cut by machine, it's cut by hand.
Our Stanhope is the real thing, but Mark doesn't think it dates from the Civil War. Stanhopes came from Europe, and in 1860, the South needed guns and supplies, not tiny photo viewers.
It would have had to have been made in France and imported. And during the Civil War, the Confederates were not worried about Stanhopes. They were looking for munitions. My sense is that it's probably from the 1880s.
Wes? Hi, it's Elise.
Hey, Elise.
Well, I have good news and bad news.
So Elise confirms my suspicions that Stanhopes didn't become popular in the U.S. until after the Civil War. But why would someone place Jeff Davis's image inside a Stanhope in 1880, some 15 years after the war was over? I'm visiting the Atlanta History Center, where Gordon Jones is the chief curator. He says that a Jeff Davis Stanhope dating from the 1880s makes perfect sense.
Well, 1880s was a time when Jefferson Davis was becoming really a very popular fellow in the South.
Gordon tells me that immediately after the war, Jeff Davis was a reviled figure in the South, blamed by many for the Confederacy's defeat. Many Confederate soldiers returned home resentful of the new social order imposed by Reconstruction. The old way of life was gone forever. Freed slaves had been made citizens and won the right to vote. But beginning in the 1870s, as the South started to recover, so did Jeff Davis's reputation. He became a potent symbol for many whites who wanted to rewrite history and turn back the clock.
What happens in the 1880s is a struggle to explain defeat. So you have various Southern writers, activists, veterans organizations, all of which are trying to explain why they lost. And the series of beliefs that they came up with to explain that is generally called today the lost cause.
Right. Gordon tells me that many Confederate veterans were on the front lines of this lost cause movement. For decades, the United Confederate Veterans continued to meet. This rare footage is of a reunion in Jackson, Mississippi in 1912. Vets magazines advertised such gatherings. They also sold memorabilia and trinkets celebrating men such as Stonewall Jackson and Jeff Davis.
Here's one of my favorite items, Wes, right here. 15th annual reunion of the Georgia Division United Confederate Veterans.
That's great,
Jeff Davis and Bobby Lee. The only one we're missing, of course, is Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah.
But we have one of those. So a really beautiful ribbon right here with Stonewall Jackson's image.
Oh yeah, that's terrific. So Gordon's pretty certain our Stanhope was once marketed to groups of Southern veterans. So, I mean, they're advertising a charm here, which would certainly include the Stanhope, right?
Absolutely right.
One thing's still not clear to me. How would Henry and Mary Wagstaff in Lafayette, Indiana, have gotten a hold of this Stanhope? Gordon says one of his genealogy researchers made a discovery about the Wagstaff family that he thinks will interest Cindy and Larry Liggett. I tell the Liggets that Henry and Mary Wagstaff had probably been Confederate supporters during the war, but that their Stanhope dated from the 1880s. Then I explain how Gordon Jones in Atlanta had made a key discovery, which may account for how the Wagstaffs had gotten hold of the Stanhope.
This is the city directory of Atlanta, and this shows everyone who was living here. And who do you suppose we find but Henry C. Wagstaff, the stenographer at the Atlanta Evening Journal.
So this must be the grandson of the Wagstaff in West Lafayette.
Absolutely. And
Gordon tells me that it's entirely possible that Henry and Mary's grandson had picked up the Stanhope in Atlanta during a period when Jeff Davis was being lionized as never before.
While he was living here, there were several Confederate veteran reunions, plus in 1893 when Jefferson Davis's body was being moved to Richmond, it came through Atlanta, and that was a huge occasion. So it could have been almost any time during that period.
I tell Larry and Cindy they have a genuine piece of history on their hands. It gives a view, quite literally, of an important period after the war when the way the conflict was remembered became more important than the facts of the war itself.
Thank you. That's great. It's a great story.
I had a blast working on it, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Both Union and Confederate veterans continued gathering well into the 20th century. In 1913, an estimated 100,000 Union and Confederate soldiers gathered peacefully for the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. Historians believe that the last surviving rebel veteran was Pleasant Crump of the 10th Alabama. He died on December 31st, 1951, at the age of 104.
Early Stanhopes were the perfect vessel for that most private of pastimes, the viewing of nudes. When French authorities seized a shipment of sexy Stanhopes in 1860 and labeled them indecent, they stepped into an argument that rages until this day. What makes one image pornography and another one art? In 1873, morals crusader Anthony Comstock convinced Congress to pass a law banning the delivery of so-called obscene material through the mail. Elements of this law remained on the books well into the 20th century. Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw called this breed of censorship Comstockery. In 1964, the U.S. Supreme Court took up the issue. A French art film, The Lovers, had been banned by the state of Ohio for its explicit sex scenes. But the nation's highest court said if the art had redeeming social value, community standards could not be used to ban the film. Their verdict included Justice Potter Stewart's famous take on pornography, "I know it when I see it." In 1973, the court's view was further defined when the justices unveiled the Miller test. The three-pronged barometer considers artistic merit, community standards, and whether the material is patently offensive in ruling something obscene. But there's still plenty of gray area. From Cincinnati's failed attempt to ban Robert Mapplethorpe's photography in 1990 to current efforts aimed at exterminating online pornography, the battle rages on.
This story takes us to the promise of black gold and instant fortunes in turn-of-the-century Texas. In the second half of the 20th century, America was fascinated with Howard Hughes Jr., movie director, Hollywood playboy, and, for a time, the richest man in the world. But the tale of the Hughes fortune doesn't begin with the Howard Hughes most of us know. It starts at the turn of the century with Howard Hughes Sr., his father. The story goes that Howard Sr. invented a remarkable drill bit that ushered in the oil age in America. And that's what helped make his son, Howard Hughes Jr., into a billionaire. But is that really how it happened? A man in San Jose, California, believes this mysterious letter, evidence that his grandfather was the man behind this invention, and that maybe, just maybe, the Hughes billions should have been his.
My grandmother used to tell us this story about my grandfather, John L. Henning Sr., who had invented a drill bit that became the basis of the Hughes fortune.
I'm Gwen Wright, and I'm on my way to meet Hayden Henning to investigate the origins of the Hughes dynasty and the beginnings of the oil age in America. So Hayden, what do you have for me?
Well, Gwen, I have an old photo of my grandfather, John L. Henning Sr., and a family story that he invented this drill bit that Howard Hughes used to start the Hughes Tool Company.
The Hughes Tool Company was the first really successful business in the Hughes empire. And it was started by Howard Hughes Sr., the father of the famous playboy, Howard Hughes Jr. In addition to Hayden's family story, he's also uncovered an intriguing clue.
I found this letter from a gentleman named Clarence Reed of the Reed Roller Bit Company. And essentially in this letter, he was asking my grandfather if he would come to Houston to discuss controversies that they were having with the drill bits.
Now, do you know what the Reed Roller Bit Company was?
Well, I did a little research on that, and I found out that they were also a company in Houston manufacturing a drill bit in competition with the Hughes drill bit.
So what exactly would you like for me to find out?
Well, Gwen, what I'd like to find out is if my grandfather was the original inventor of the Hughes drill bit.
Well, that's a fascinating question. What did your grandfather do?
My grandfather was a mining engineer, and he's in the photograph here. And he worked with a prominent mining engineer there also named Herman Frosch.
Well, that's quite intriguing. Well, may I take these with me?
Yes, you may.
I'm eager to see what I can find out about the story. It's a great story, but right away I'm skeptical. Rich and powerful figures like Hughes always attract false claims. In fact, when Howard Hughes Jr. died in 1976, he was worth nearly $1 billion, and there were no fewer than 40 fake wills circulating. Everyone wanted a piece of that fortune. So let's take a closer look at the letter Hayden's grandfather received from the Reed Roller Bit Company. They're asking John Henning to come to Houston because he is possibly in possession of some information which might be of value in their present or future controversies respecting roller bits. So maybe there is something to Hayden's story. Maybe Reed Roller Bit wanted Henning because he knew something about the Hughes drill bit. I wonder if they were involved in legal battles with Hughes. I'll need more information on the Reed Roller Bit Company and any lawsuits against them. But first, I want to get a little more background on the Hughes fortune. Howard Hughes Jr. spent much of his adult life in the public spotlight. He was America's first playboy industrialist. For decades, he grabbed headlines as a daredevil pilot, Hollywood producer, and, in his later life, as an eccentric recluse. In 1930, Hughes premiered Hell's Angels, the most expensive film ever made at that time, costing $3.8 million. The film profiled fearless war pilots. It lost over $1 million at the box office, but led Hughes to a fascination with flight that never waned. In 1935, he broke the world speed record, flying at 352 miles an hour. 3 years later, he set new round-the-world flight records and cut Lindbergh's New York to Paris record in half. Most of us know next to nothing about Howard Hughes Sr., yet he was responsible for launching Hughes Jr. to celebrity and fortune. When Hughes Sr. died in 1924, he left young Howard the Hughes Tool Company. In the early part of the 20th century, the Hughes Tool Company made most of its money selling and leasing the twin-cone drill bit for oil drilling. That's the device Hayden says his grandfather invented. This is interesting. Here's an account of how Howard Hughes Sr. got hold of that invention, and it doesn't mention Hayden's grandfather. This is a personal account of a chance meeting with Howard Hughes in a Louisiana bar. This account is from some oral histories by early oil pioneers. It tells the story of a Louisiana inventor out for the night drinking with friends. The inventor is carrying his design for a new kind of drill bit, one that could cut through hard stone. Howard Hughes is there that night, too. He takes a canny interest in the inventor and his design. The oral history goes on to say that Hughes bought my idea and paid me $150 for the idea. And I stood in the bar with the oil boys, and I spent about $50 in the bar. But this account isn't from John Henning. It's from another Louisiana inventor named Granville Humason. And I find this same story repeated in several biographies of Howard Hughes Sr. I'm not sure what to make of Hayden's claim. It certainly contradicts what the history books say. And to get to the bottom of this mystery, I'm heading out to the Texas oil fields, to an oil well outside Houston. Don Clutterbuck is a geologist and oil history expert. He describes drill bits as literally the cutting edge of the oil business.
What's happening, Gwen, is the bit's been put on the end of this drill pipe. They're now lowering it into the ground. Through the hose that you see here, drilling fluid will be pumped down the inside and around the bit to cool it as the bit penetrates. And hopefully at 10,200 feet, they'll have a discovery.
Don tells me that people have been drilling in this area for over 100 years. The spot we're standing on is only an hour away from Spindletop, America's first oil gusher. On January 10th, 1901, the Spindletop well erupted, spouting 100,000 barrels of oil every day. That's over 4 million gallons. The gusher triggered a turn-of-the-century gold rush in Texas, as thousands streamed into the area seeking their fortune. But Don tells me that these early wildcat drillers could only hunt for oil in soft ground. The drill bit they had at the time, called the fishtail, was nearly worthless when it hit hard rock.
The problem with this one is it's not very efficient. In drilling, it would penetrate loose sands very easily, but if it hit a very hard layer of rock, all this thing would do would be just bounce. It would not cut. As a result of that, the technology limited us to what we could do with the drilling.
That left billions of dollars of fossilized carbon trapped, buried under the hard stone. Great riches awaited the inventor who could get to that river of oil. In 1909, Hughes laid claim to that fortune. His twin-cone drill bit allowed oil drillers to penetrate mother lodes of black gold, thousands of feet below the surface. When the Hughes twin cones hit hard rock, they keep turning, their dozens of sharp teeth grinding through the hard stone. This new way of drilling helped make scores of new Texas millionaires.
With the innovation of Mr. Hughes in 1909 with the two-cone bit, this changed everything. As you'll notice, these are two cones that are opposite each other. There are 166 teeth on the cone. As the drill string rotates, these cones rotate also and essentially crush and penetrate the rock.
A vast amount of oil below that surface was excessive.
That's exactly right. It vaulted the industry into technology that we didn't have available to us in the past.
But it wasn't just personal fortunes that would be transformed with this invention. America itself would change. The gushers of oil unleashed by the revolutionary drilling technology gave Henry Ford's new horseless carriage an abundant supply of cheap fuel. The drill bit and the motor car helped remake America. 100 years later, oil drillers are still using Hughes bits. Don shows me the modern version, the tricone bit, still made by a Hughes company. He says it hasn't changed all that much from the original design. This one invention had a huge impact on the country. But was Hayden's grandfather, John Henning, the unsung hero behind all this? I'm meeting with Hughes scholar Catherine Hewitt. She's director of collections for the Evergreen Aviation Museum in Oregon. She meets me in front of the spruce goose, one of the most popular symbols of Hughes Jr.'s incredible wealth. Catherine reminds me that when we think about the wealth of the Hughes family, we really ought to think back to the drill bit and to the rough and tumble business skills of Howard Hughes Sr. in the early Texas oil industry.
Howard Hughes Sr. was just a wildcat oil driller seeking a gigantic oil strike, just like thousands of other people in Texas at the time.
She tells me that Hughes Sr. studied law for a time at Harvard, but soon dropped out, eager to strike it rich. In 1895, he hit the road, drifting from one drilling operation to the next. But his legal training helped Hughes understand that what mattered with a new invention was who took out the patent. Howard Hughes Sr. submitted his drill bit to the U.S. Patent Office, and in 1909 was granted patent number 930,759. Then Catherine tells me something else about Hughes Sr. that piques my curiosity.
Hughes Sr. continued to build his business, refining his drill bits and suing anyone with a design remotely close to his.
It's the mention of lawsuits that gets my attention. Hayden's letter from the Reed Roller Bit Company is asking for his grandfather's help in a dispute with Hughes. It suggests the possibility of legal action. I wonder if Hughes sued Reed Roller Bit, and whether, buried underneath the official history, there's any truth to Hayden's story. I'm searching a summary of federal lawsuits, and on one page I find what may be a telling fragment of information. It's from a summary of a lawsuit dated February 3rd, 1925, that says, through a long period of years, Howard R. Hughes and C.E. Reed have been engaged in litigations of various sorts over the use of drilling tools and equipment covered by conflicting patent claims. The lawsuit refers specifically to patent number 930,759. That's the drill bit that put Hughes Tool Company on the map. So Hughes did sue Reed over the twin cone bit. But as I comb the transcripts, there's no mention of John Henning. If he really was the inventor, I'd have expected his name to appear. So far, I haven't found anything to back Hayden's story. I'm wondering if John Henning was even in the oil business. I'm heading back to the hotel to check on one last resource. Don Clutterbuck in Texas had recommended I consult an encyclopedic text called The History of Oil Well Drilling. Buried inside the mammoth volume, I find some crucial information. It's a list of 6 inventors who did pioneering work with twin cone drill bits before Hughes received his 1909 patent. At a minimum, it looks as if Howard Hughes wasn't alone in this idea. John Henning is not one of the inventors listed, but there is one name that I recognize. I think I have what I need for Hayden. I tell Hayden I didn't find any evidence that his grandfather, John Henning, sold a drill bit design to Howard Hughes. Instead, I've come across a story of another inventor, and that tale sounded very much like Hayden's. It's from an oral history of a Louisiana inventor. It was a man named Granville Humason who described a chance meeting with Howard Hughes. So we don't have this connection to your grandfather.
Well, I feel a little disappointed, but I also feel that we've put a long-standing mystery to rest.
Then I tell Hayden about the discovery I'd made in the history of oil drilling. It was a connection between John Henning's boss, Herman Frasch, and the twin cone drill bit. It says here that around 1907, a twin cone bit was used at Sulphur, Louisiana, under the direction of Herman Frasch. According to available information, the Frasch bit was not patented and not marketed. It seems the idea for the twin cone drill bit had been around for several years, but Howard Hughes had staked his claim first with a patent. I tell Hayden it's possible his grandfather was involved in the creation of this important invention. But business skills and a legion of lawyers are often more important than technological breakthroughs for getting into the history books and building a fortune.
It's interesting to know that he did play a part in that, and I want to thank you for your investigation.
The wells at Spindletop continued to produce oil for many decades, over 150 million barrels. Today, Spindletop is a popular tourist attraction, but oil production has slowed dramatically. It's unlikely America will see another mad rush for undiscovered oil like the one at the turn of the century. Instead, the mad rush may be for a new source to replace the world's dwindling supply of this precious fuel. For more on how to do a patent search, go to History Detectives on the web at pbs.org.
Some obscure-sounding inventions have given birth to some of America's most famous fortunes. In the late 19th century, George Eastman wanted to take pictures while on vacation. But in 1878, taking snapshots was no picnic. Eastman invented a dry plate emulsion. This allowed shutterbugs to snap at their leisure and made him a very rich man. And while our country has had a long love affair with trains, in the mid-1800s, there was nothing to love about their safety record. In 1872, George Westinghouse patented the air brake. The invention made the railroads a much safer place, and Westinghouse would go on to become one of the wealthiest men in the country. And then there are the happy accidents. In 1894, Will Keith Kellogg was running a sanitarium in Michigan when some wheat dough grew stale. He ran it through a roller, and out came the flakes that, once toasted, would soon be appearing on breakfast tables nationwide. Still, not all inventors get rich. In 1927, 14-year-old farm boy Philo Farnsworth had the spark of invention that would produce the world's first television picture tube. Unfortunately, patent fights prevented him from ever turning a profit. Later, Farnsworth would not allow his children to watch TV, calling the invention worthless.
History Detectives will return in a moment. But first...
Coming from director Martin Scorsese.
That he not busy being born is busy dying.
Everything you thought you knew about Bob Dylan is about to change. Bob Dylan looks back to where it all began. No Direction Home. Bob Dylan, a Martin Scorsese picture. Wednesday, 9/8 Central on most PBS stations.
Next time, join the history detectives on the front lines. Does this map hold the key to a Civil War secret?
So it will be a bloodbath on the Confederate side of the line.
Is this advertisement the real thing?
We do have quite a few fakes.
And how did this billy club strike a blow to the early labor movement?
The state police were called in, militias were called in.
Track down the truth next time on History Detectives.
Be a history detective yourself. Go to pbs.org and learn more about investigative techniques or submit your own mystery to the team. You can also find out more about tonight's investigations only at pbs.org.
Watching the detectives. It's just like watching the detectives. Watching the detectives.